exciting news is out there. As always, a lot of us in here are currency traders. A lot of us here trade equities and futures, all kinds of different stuff. But all of us are really affected by this group here, OPEC. This Friday, there is an OPEC meeting. They've moved the meeting back a couple of times, but it appears that we're really going to have an OPEC meeting.
This is the first
and that's
time.
going to move.
It's the first time I've ever heard you call them a group.
Group, mafia. You can use whatever terminology you want to use, but OPEC is, at the end of the day, they're an organization, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. It's an intergovernmental body aiming to safeguard individual and collective interests. The term safeguard is super important here because that refers to OPEC's undying love for high oil prices and what they can buy with those high oil prices. You have to understand that when you're talking about OPEC. They are a group. There are several different countries, when you think about it. They had a really, really beautiful, very, very long history. They had their first meeting in September 1st, 1960 over in Baghdad. Iraq, there were 5 founding members, those being Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Many have come and gone, bounced in and out. Russia has a relationship with OPEC. They're not really a part of them. The U.S. has a relationship with OPEC. We're not really a part of them. But by and large, the leader of the group is Saudi Arabia. And whatever the crown prince says, generally speaking, goes. When you're thinking about this stuff, right, the reason why I'd like to talk about oil is because it affects so much stuff, so many things. With everything that's happened in Israel, with everything that's happening in the Middle East, fast phantom, with everything happening with the Premier League, you want to talk about oil money. They basically offered Ronaldo a small country to come over and play. It's insane how much that man's getting paid. This is what they're caring about. This is what's important to them. They're trying to figure out how in the world can we make sure oil prices are north of this $90 figure. There is really a desire when you hear from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who is pretty much the most important member of OPEC, of this mafioso, of this group. When you hear them talk about things, they're always talking about things from the perspective of $80 oil, $90 oil, $100 oil. They got pretty close, kind of dangerously close towards the beginning of this year. And then we saw another absolutely insane spike not too long after that. These dates are flipped. So this is actually October 1st. This is November 1st. Every other country in the world does calendars different than here in the U.S. So forgive me.
Does it properly? Right? I can't. Day, month, year. We don't need any. Day, month, year.
It's disgusting. So it does make sense, but it doesn't make it any less disgusting. I apologize to anyone that lives outside the U.S. These numbers are fun, but yeah. So obviously, there's been a lot of things that's happened with oil as of late, and that's one of the reasons why OPEC has decided that they need to have a meeting. They have meetings according to the website, according to what you're supposed to hear from them. They're supposed to have meetings on a monthly basis. They don't do that. They write their own rules. I call them a group of mafiosos because they do whatever they want. It's an organization that is ruled by the almighty dollar and whoever finds black gold. The U.S., we have a presence there. Russia has a presence there, but they don't care about either of those countries. All they care about is how much, how many, and how often they can buy beautiful golden Lamborghinis. That's all we're really after here. So when this meeting happens on Friday, anyone out there that's actually interested in trading, anyone that's interested in trying to be involved in things this week, I always say, err on the side of caution, but the fact of the matter is there's going to be opportunity when they start talking. When they start talking and they start having this meeting, first and foremost, you have to remember oil-related products are slippery when wet, and there's no caution sign out there. So when there's a meeting being had that's going to affect the price of oil, you got to be careful when you're hopping into any kind of position, whether that's Brent, whether that's crude, whether that's a futures contract or a CFD. You have to remember that someone could come out and say something or retract a statement that will bounce this thing around. And the market is very, very, very good at remaining irrational much longer than you can remain Solomon. The second tip that I have here is always consider the broader market context before making trade decisions. There's so much data out there. There's so much affecting these markets. You have wars, the Sasquatch talking about refineries in Texas. We have numbers that come out of Texas and Oklahoma about our holdings here in the US that affects the oil markets. There's a lot of things playing a role. Sasquatch saying they own a refinery in Texas. Yeah, they probably own a couple more than this one. But that's where we're at. My last tip, is just look for some specific numbers. Oftentimes you'll hear different members of OPEC, specifically the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. His Royal Highness will often talk about specific numbers that they're cutting in order to bring the price of oil up. Every once in a while, you'll hear them say, hey, we're going to cut 400,000 barrels of oil production per day, or we're going to cut 1 million barrels of oil production per day. These are numbers that the market hangs its hat on. These are numbers that we consider incredibly important, because if 1 million barrels of oil are being taken out of the market on a daily basis when we were accustomed to having it, that is going to lower supply and keep demand where it is. What does that mean? That means price inevitably is going to pop up. But what does this actually look like? Let's visualize this thing for just a moment, because when you're thinking about this stuff, it can be helpful to talk about it, but it's not always helpful if you can't see what's going on. So look at this market right here. This is crude oil. Now, again, this is a futures contract. I'm a futures guy. What can I say? I have to be able to talk about things from an aspect which I really, really understand. I understand well. If you look back here, this is the past week. This is the right way to write dates. The day, the date, the month, then the year. It's great. It's great. Of course, they do it this way too. Yeah, the right way to do it. Obviously, jeez. So you have Friday entering in here. You have Sunday. We get into Monday. We see a little bit of movement, but this OPEC meeting was supposed to happen in the middle of the week. So what happens? We see a beautiful amount of chop around a level. This is a level that I've had. At this point, I've had this level for years. I've been trading oil for the past 4 or 5 years, for better or for worse. I've had this level here for years. This one's a new one from this year, but these two levels have been around for 3 or 4 years on my charts. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. But we consolidated around here. We got a little bit of news in terms of oil inventories on Wednesday. So we did see a little bit of a move there. This is the hourly chart, right? So we've seen a little bit of volatility, but for the most part, for the most of the week, you just saw this thing move sideways. And this is what's going to continue to happen. Commodities don't care about holidays. And so you'll see a little bit of movement in commodity-based products, but it's going to be not much movement until we actually get some news. Now, when we get some news, this thing is going to move, and it's going to move aggressively. So I always want to remind people to keep in mind the broader context, because this chart is primed for an opportunity to go towards the upside. We've seen a beautiful sell-off here. We haven't gotten a really great pullback. So there's a really strong opportunity for this thing to potentially pop. I'm looking for longs here, especially after we get a close like this. Jesus, this is insane. So if any news comes out about Saudi Arabia or whomever cutting back production significantly, then we're going to see this thing move to the upside. As always, when we talk about these kinds of events, we have to remember that picking direction is super hard. Because even if you pick the right direction, you might get wicked out of positions. You might see volatility. So you always have to be careful here. But thinking about the broader market context and receiving the data, waiting for it to play out, waiting for things to close, maybe waiting until Monday like I will, to enter into a position is always a wise choice and always a great way to look at the market. That, my dear friends, is a Trading Lab for today. Thank you, as always.